Very good evening. I am Shilpa and I welcome you all to the NCERT live phone-in program. When we say story, we all get hyper excited. But the way one storyteller tells the story, that makes it more interesting. Today we will learn about the several aspects of storytelling with the help of our sagacious expert in the studio, Professor Sandhya Sahoo, to discuss our today's topic of discussion, which is storytelling to young children. Professor Sahoo is an English language professor in the Department of Education and Languages in NCERT. We welcome you, ma'am, in our today's program.
Thank you. Thank you, Shilpa.
So let's proceed to understand this very interesting topic.
Good evening, friends. This is a very simple topic, but it's very relevant to our school education because as Shilpa has rightly pointed out, that children love stories.
Right.
They have an innate interest to listen to stories, and since they have that innate love to listen to the stories, they want to listen to more stories.
Right.
The more stories they get, better is their language acquisition. And not only for language acquisition, they feel happy when they listen to stories, when they listen to somebody telling the stories.
Right.
So the storytellers, importance of storyteller is we will highlight here, because the way you tell the story, that will create interest in children. So how to tell a story, and through stories what the children are going to learn, and when a storyteller is telling a story, a teacher is telling a story, what are the things that she wants to keep, she should keep in mind, how should she prepare herself to tell a story, that we will discuss in this
In our today's program.
in today's program. Right. That will do.
Right. So, ma'am, certainly we have heard of stories like story of thirsty crow and of rabbit and turtle. So the basic question here comes is why we actually read stories.
You will find that children, they identify themselves when the stories are told. They identify with the characters. They try, because they try to go inside the world of the story, and then they take up the characters also.
Right.
When they listen to the story, and these stories also, they create a magic world for them. A sense of wonder that also comes when they listen to the story. They feel that what is the wonderful world of a story.
Right.
So in the process, they get glued, they get attracted, and they get captivated, and they get engaged also. Right. When the story is told to them.
Right.
So that is the reason why we feel that children, since they love stories, there is an innate love for listening to the stories. So we must exploit this story, the strategy of telling a story to them, so the children will get interested. And the other thing that we want to highlight as a teacher is that we want children to learn language.
Right.
So how to learn language through the stories, that also we will emphasize here in this program.
So, ma'am, you have prepared such a wonderful presentation for us. So if you could just make us understand few of the slides.
The first slide I have talked about is stories and children. That is my first slide. There I have told that why stories are important for children. Stories are particularly important in the lives of the children because it helps the children to understand the world, understand the people, understand others also,
Right.
understand other characters, and understand the situations, the incidents, and they also imagine certain things.
Right.
And they guess certain things. Given like suppose you are telling a story and leave in a particular point, children start imagining what could be the end of the story, what could be the next incident, what could be the reaction of the character to this particular incident, and how this character will behave when the other character is speaking in this way. So all the time something is going on in the mind, and children are quite active, and they are interacting the story. That the interaction is going on between the story, the characters, and the listener, the student.
Right. So, ma'am, you certainly discussed about few points about why we read stories. So, we have few points here. If you could just make us explain that.
My next slide talks about why stories. First, I said that the story always motivates children. So the motivation part is important.
Right.
And they also listen to the stories for meaning, because we say that language learning is meaning making. So they try to make meaning out of whatever they listen.
Right.
And then they start predicting, they start guessing, and they know that they are listening with a purpose, because the story begins with a problem. If you look at how the stories are written, it begins with a problem, we call it conflict.
Right.
And how the characters are entangled, or what is the reaction of the characters to the conflict. How do they behave in that particular situation? How do they behave in that particular incident?
Right.
So what is their reaction to the other characters? So in the process, children know that this story has a purpose. So if the story has a purpose, the story has a focus, then their attention is also focused.
Right.
And then they listen, and sometimes when they listen to the stories and they understand the stories, this becomes an impetus. This gives the children enough enthusiasm, motivation to read the story.
Right.
So listening is leading to reading. So that is also we want children to develop. Like they listen to the story and then they will also read the story. In the process, what they have listened, the language they have listened, and the language they see also when they read. So language acquisition becomes better and easier.
Right.
So in the slide I have talked about that. And when the teacher is asking questions to them, like suppose the teacher is telling a story, in between she or he asks some questions. So that becomes a stimulus for them to speak,
Right.
to answer. So the story becomes a stimulus for speaking and also for writing, because sometimes we want them to whatever they listen, we want them to write in a sequence. So that like all the skills are being integrated, and in an integrated manner all the skills are being developed in the child.
Right.
So this leads to communication. Communication is both way. You answer to the questions of the teacher, and simultaneously you are writing.
Right.
So both the written and spoken communication, they want to we want the children to develop when they are dealing with the story or listening to the story.
Right. Ma'am, in between the conversation you mentioned about the listening to reading, right? So when we just talk about storytelling, so how a story should be told or to be read?
The story to be told, I'll just give you one example, that we have given many stories in our books.
Right.
All our books, we have supplement reader, we have textbooks, we have used quite a number of stories. But when we are using stories in the books, we do not want the stories to be taught as a text. So stories are primarily to be told. That's why we say telling of stories.
Right.
And when you tell a story, children are they listen to the stories when the words, the sounds or the language, they are in active usage. And when I am describing a character, when I am talking about a character, when I am talking about an incident, I use words to explain it. So now this language is in use. So they are listening to the language in context. And when you are listening to a language in context, or that means you have exposure to the language. All the linguists that in our previous programs we have said that children learn the language better when they are exposed to the language. Language exposure is essential for learning a language. So while telling a story, children are being exposed to language while listening to it. Because when you go by the principles of language learning, it is listening, speaking, reading and writing.
Right.
So as you are also a child, you must have listened to many stories. Your parents must have told you, your grandparents must have told you, your siblings and elder siblings must have told you. So unconsciously and naturally you pick up language.
Right.
So the storyteller should tell the story in such a way, in a natural way, so the children will pick up language. And this storytelling is not only one time telling a story, you can tell a story repeatedly, once or twice, tell a story, retell a story, so that multiple listening exposure should be given to the children. If the children are listen to the story repeatedly, they acquire, they pick up language. Languages are picked up. You cannot teach language to a child. So children, by exposure, by giving a continuous exposure to the children, children pick up language. So when the storyteller is telling the stories repeatedly and giving multiple listening exposure to the children, children or students or the listeners, they pick up language. So language exposure means you are like you listen to the language, and more listening and good listening and will lead to the speaking also.
Right.
So that is why I mean the storyteller should use the language in naturally.
Right.
And suppose a text is given, a story is given. The storyteller should not tell the story exact verbatim what is written in the story.
Okay.
They can change the words, they can change the expressions, and they change the pause. They can, because when you tell a story, you pause and there is some silent like you can maintain, and somewhere you maintain a silence,
Right.
and sometimes you speak something very loudly. So your tone, your tonal variation is very important. And here also you when you tell a story, the voice modulation is also important, and how you speak also, it is very important. For example, there is a story on the large turnip. It is a story, and I want to tell the story that there is a large turnip and little boy comes and wants to pull it. That is the story, and he is not being able to pull it, and he is inviting all his father, mother, everybody to come and pull the turnip. So as a storyteller, I will say there was a huge turnip. So when I say huge turnip, then when the children are listening to me, they will also imagine that it is a huge turnip. So
Right.
imagination is also playing a role here. And then the little boy comes, looks at the turnip, tries to pull it, he pulls and pulls and pulls, but falls down, and calls the father, "Father, come and help me." So your tonal variation will give a dramatic effect to the story. So and when you are telling the story, it is like there is a plot, there is a story, the sequence of the story, and you are giving the incidents in sequence, one by one. What happens first and second and third and fourth. So gradually in space and in time the story moves. So when you are giving the sequence of the story, so you are as if there is a film, and there is screen after screen things are being exposed to the child. So it is like a film, like a screen that is moving before the child one by one.
Right.
And the child is visualizing it. So there is a mental picture going on in the mind of the child.
Right.
The child is now living in the world of the story, and then participating also. And when the storyteller is telling the story, here the storyteller and the listener,
Right.
and the students, they go together.
Okay.
And then the storyteller is telling the story in such a way that children also believe him. That yes,
Right.
whatever he is saying is right. Acha, this happens now, and it is happening like this. And then there is an awe, there is wonder, and sometimes they also guess, maybe the teacher is going to say like this, but something turns different.
Right.
So now the interaction is going on, and children are also being exposed to values, exposed to different cultures, exposed to different characters,
Right.
different places when the stories are being told. So in a way, it is a kind of total exposure that is given to the children, cultural, social, and also psychological, personal. All the exposures are being given to the children through the story.
Right. So ma'am, you just mentioned about the telling part of the story. So if I'll come to the reading part of the story, so what are the advantages of reading stories to children?
Now sometimes teachers, they are not very capable of telling stories. Sometimes they lack words, they lack certain expressions,
Right.
and they feel that they don't feel confident that they are going to capture the attention of the children.
Right.
They may not be able to take the children along with them. and they may not, because it is almost like playing a drama when you are telling a story. Okay, there will be dialogues and there will be rise and fall of this thing. So there will be gestures, there will be postures, there will be facial expressions, there will be eye contact with the listeners, because when you speak tell the story, there has to be eye contact, and maybe individual eye contact or contact with the audience. So those things sometimes some teachers they do not have. So they can take the help of reading the story aloud.
Right.
So while reading the story aloud also, I think I have given one this slide that sometimes their proficiency is low.
Right.
So if they read it and with proper pronunciation, with proper stress, with proper rise and fall of the tone, that also create a kind of atmosphere or the world for the children to get engaged with the story. So being able to let the children read what you have been reading. So the children are now, when you are reading, either they will listen to you or they will follow you in the book.
Right.
So what we always as teacher educators, we want the teachers to tell the story first. Okay. And then make the children read the story, or the teacher can read the stage story again.
Okay.
So that let them listen to it, let them have the idea what is the story about, and some quick questions can be asked to know whether the students understood it or not. And one thing I want to tell you here is that because children come with prior experience, children come with prior knowledge.
Right.
Okay, and they come from a society, they come from a value system, they come from a culture. When they listen to a story, for example Tolstoy's story or Gopinath Mohanty's story, any story you talk about, story from outside the country, outside their society, some stories in translation also they listen to. So they are exposed to a different kind of culture.
Right.
So there is when they read a story or listen to the story, the cultural understanding is going on, and communication is also going on simultaneously.
Right.
So this cultural understanding is that they understand the culture that is given in the story, and they understand also the value system given in the story, and they try to also compare and contrast that what is there in their culture, what they know and what the story tells us. Okay, there is always this communication is interaction is going on between them. And then some like if some good stories that we have given in our textbooks, they are universal stories.
Okay.
The meaning of universal story is that the values and the wisdom that is given in the story, they are true to all the they are true in all parts of the world.
Okay.
They are true to people, true to culture, and the wisdom is always true to that. And this wisdom is also, common to all people and common to all cultures. Okay. For example, we have given a story, 3 questions. Okay. This is a story in our class 3 book, Honeycomb, and the story is about a king who is, the story is about a king who is who has asked 3 questions to a hermit. And these 3 questions that the king has asked is who is the right what is the right time to start a work, and who is the right person, and what is the right action I should do. And the hermit replies that the time is now. No. The person who is, you know the story, yes, the person is the person who is with you, and the act that you are going to do is the good act that you can do to the person. And this is true for everybody. This is not only true for Tolstoy, it is true for us also. Right. So in my culture also, the time is now. I must do good to others. So there are all the stories, the value is integrated in the story. We don't teach values separately. We have integrated values in this, like the story have values in them. Right. There are many stories. In the supplementary reader also there are stories. So here what I want to say is that in this intercultural understanding or intercultural understanding and communication, where sometimes some new ideas, sometimes new values are given to the children. And sometimes children think this we have not heard about. But so they compare, they contrast, they try to find the differences, they find the commonalities between these cultures and between these values, and try to find out what is best for them. So here the critical analysis is going on, and then they become analytical. And when you ask them questions, that is very interesting. Children, when you ask the questions to the children they give variety of answers.
Right.
You will give a different kind of answer, I will give a different kind of answer, and the students, when one question, do you like the prince, do you like the king, what part of the king you like most, so they will give different kinds of answers. And did you like the hermit, why he was like, why he made the king wait for his answer, so many answers will come. So multiple answers will come because the story gives opportunities for the children to think critically, to analyze. So that analytical like bent of mind is in process, and children answer differently, and all answers are correct because you have thought, because that is your point of view. We talk about point of view. So from my point of view it is like this, for your point of view it is like this. So when children are giving so many answers, and it is giving a kind of discussion point to the teacher to discuss on these questions, and can ask more questions, that why do you say like this, why are it, why did you like this, and why you did not like this. So there are many probing questions that the teacher can ask. What else? Suppose this is happened like this, what else? So children can answer. And also, how do you know this? So there are many questions like, can you tell us more about it? Do you understand this? Do you agree? If you agree, why do you agree? So many questions the teacher can ask to get answers from the children, to make their mind active. So this, I told you that this is active learning, interactive learning, and we want the children to participate, and we want the children to, because we want the children to learn the language. More there is discussion, more there is opportunities for them to listen and speak, better is the language learning.
Right. So ma'am, you just certainly told us about how stories actually help to disseminate information about our culture, values, and critical thinking. It also enhances that. So if we just if you could just enlighten us with the rationale of using for using stories, so what could be that?
So suppose you talk about I think this also I have given in my slide, that stories are the holistic approach to language teaching. That I have that point I wanted to make, that is a holistic approach. I told you that it allows the children to listen to the language. So when they listen to the language in context, when they listen to the language being used in a natural way, so they pick up language. And stories are very good when you tell stories, and children listen to the stories in a very relaxed manner. So it is non-threatening situation.
Right.
The non-threatening situation, because I tell a story and children listen to it, because there is nothing is at stake. They are listening to it. They know that now there will be characters, there will be some incidents, and then there will be play of incidents and characters, and there will be the conflict, there will be some problem, and at the end the problem will be solved. Solved, or the poetic justice they will be achieved. Okay. So when we say that holistic approach, now the language they learn, they are exposed to culture, they are exposed to interaction, they also speak, they also think, they also critically analyze. So it is the rationale of using a story is a holistic like to give children a complete exposure to language and in social context.
Okay.
This is in social context we are giving, because when you are talking about story, it is happening in a society, in a world, in a place. So it is that social thing, like when I said it is a social issue, that also comes. So now again, second thing, I my second point, I talked about the stories support natural acquisition of all language. You talk about Brunner, you talk about Vygotsky, you talk about Piaget, you talk about all these people. You will find that they all talk about this social interaction.
Right.
The more the interaction, the more the listening is better like acquisition of language.
Right.
Because as children we also first listen to the language, then we spoke.
Right.
So that is, and then my third point talks about culture and attitude, So, and then when you are exposed to the characters, when you are exposed to the situations, when you are exposed to the problems, when you are exposed to the issues, you also feel that the children that they also say that what is right and what is wrong, and sometimes they understand the characters,
Right.
they understand the characters in situations. And when you ask the question that suppose you are in that situation, what will be your reaction, how will you react, how will you behave, they give a very positive aspect to it. So, the positive attitude is also being developed, and then children are also and a kind of sympathetic, they become sympathetic, they become empathetic to the characters.
Right.
And so a complete, it's a complete exposure to language and nature, human nature, human values, societal values. So that is the rationale behind using the stories for school children.
Right. Ma'am, I actually read one article related to storytelling. So I got to know that there are techniques of storytelling. So if you could just highlight few of them.
If you look at the how to tell a story, so that actually I want to tell my my teachers that how to tell a story and how to become a good storyteller, because storytellers actually they are actually the masters of the situation. That is number one. Number two is that to become a good storyteller, you have to read the story twice, thrice, 4 times.
Okay.
You have to read the story well. You should know, you should have a mind map that this is the plot and this is the sequence of the story, and that sequence of the story you should keep in mind, and some key points also you keep in mind. As a storyteller, I'll keep in mind the key points, I'll keep in mind the key events also in my mind.
Okay.
And then while telling this, before telling the story, I will prepare myself that these are the incidents, and I will sequence my incidents like this.
Okay.
So it should look like a film. I mean, it should give the idea of a film, that is series of incidents. So what I will say first, what I will say second, what I will emphasize, what I will not emphasize. So those are the things as a storyteller, as a teacher, I must keep in mind first. The other thing is that you must use your own language.
Okay.
You should not use the book's language. If you are the story is given in the book and you want to tell the story to the children, if you listen, if you stick to the book's language, sometimes the flow is lost. So as a storyteller, I must create my own version of the story.
Okay.
My own version of the story, and I will adapt. I will also improvise the story. And then the other point as a storyteller I must keep in mind is that I must tell the story to myself first.
Okay.
So I will tell and retell the story to myself first, and I should feel that this is a story. So that the feeling of a story should also come to me first, and then this is the pre-requirement.
Right.
Okay, and after that, when I am ready with the story, then I can I will go for the performance skill. How should I perform before the before my audience, before my students? That is a performance skill. So first thing is that I must know in how to modulate my own tone. I think in the beginning also I told you that my volume, the tone, the pitch. The tempo,
Right.
all these things will vary. Suppose I am very angry, so my tone will be different.
Right.
I am submissive, my tone will be different. I am describing a very simple person, it will be very different. I am describing an elephant, a huge and big elephant with big ears and small eyes. So with my small eyes, so children will also say they small eyes.
Small eyes.
Suppose I am very irritated, I said this is disgusting, and children will, if you look at the faces of the children, the face will also show that this is disgusting. So and they will say that, they will imitate your expression also.
Right.
So what you say, children also imitate. I say in their life also they imitate. So, the language, what I want to say is that the language that we use while telling a story, children use this language as a tool to express themselves,
Okay.
to express their ideas, to express their thoughts, to express their opinion. So, that goes a long way.
Right.
So, how we speak is very important when we tell a story. So, that every storyteller must keep in mind.
Right. So, ma'am, we are just almost on a words to wrap up our show. If you could just conclude your words.
And at the end, I'd like to say a quote a person. I liked it. He said that storytelling is the greatest technology that humans have ever created.
Okay.
It is the greatest technology. And this story is not only confined to small children or adult or young learners or like adolescents. To me also, I also feel very happy when I listen to the story. But yes, for me, the storyteller is very, very important, and the storyteller actually helps me to create a world where I can visit and revisit, and will help me to read the story.
Right.
So, that is very important for me.
Right. So, today we very well understood about the why we read stories, and also ma'am made us understand about the techniques for storytelling. So, thank you so much, ma'am, for letting us know a lot about storytelling.
Thank you so much.
So,
Any
if you
question? Any question they have?
Any question, then we will discuss about it, ma'am, in our rest of the parts. If we will if we'll get any question regarding that, and further, if you have any query, any suggestion regarding our any program, then you can dial into our toll-free number or can drop an email to us. Till then, take care and keep watching Kishore Manch.
Thank you. Thank you so much.